I am really excited to be celebrating Age Scotland's 75th anniversary. But also this provides a chance for us to look back over the last 75 years and look at the archives of the fantastic work that have been done by older people's groups, both nationally and locally in the community throughout Scotland. It is quite incredible to think that the very first meeting of the Scottish Old People's Welfare Committee took place way back in January 1943 in Edinburgh. This was just one of many committees set up during World War II to support the war effort and the well-being of people in Scotland. The committee's aims were to gather information of the present position of the care and welfare of the aged and to raise awareness of the needs of older people. I am absolutely delighted to introduce a film that will be looking back at our long and illustrious history. The immediate priority in 1943 was to tackle the lack of appropriate homes and housing for older people, and a committee was set up to investigate this issue. The working group produced a directory of homes for older people and pressed for the building and creation of more residential homes for them. The 1940s committee minutes are filled with references to endowments of cash and buildings, and fundraising efforts to support the opening of new, eventide homes by the churches and some by older people's welfare committees. There were other concerns too. In the 1940s, most older people were still living at home, and studies drew attention to the hidden poverty and loneliness many of these older people were experiencing within their own homes. Many older people were suffering from malnutrition, and this was due to the lack of access to food or the ability to cook food, and there was also the need for domestic help. As the scale of needs became clear, great effort was put into the setting up of local committees to provide practical support and services across cities, towns and villages in Scotland. The 1950s was a period of economic and population growth and social improvements as the country started to put the hardship of wartime austerity behind it. It was also a time of tremendous growth for older people's organisations right across Scotland. By 1954, there were 76 old people's welfare committees in operation, stretching from the Scottish borders to the Orkney Islands. Ayrshire alone had 14. Even more impressive was the scale of activities and services that were developed and delivered by these local community groups, and of course the National Scottish Older People's Welfare Committee. We saw the early emphasis on boosting the number of residential homes for older people actually giving way to the provision of services to allow older people to remain in their own homes, living independently. These visiting services were able to provide friendship to older people in their homes to alleviate loneliness, but also the added factor of establishing the needs of older people in their community. Local committees were also at the forefront of establishing social clubs for older people, meal services, cooperative services, holiday schemes, and a host of other activities such as free coal or logs, treats, social gatherings and outings. Nationally, Scottish Old People's Welfare Committee championed its members by promoting their activities and providing training, information and advice guides to enable local committees to grow their services. The Old People's Welfare Scottish Bulletin was published 3 times per year and was packed with news of exciting developments and initiatives from committees and clubs around the country. The blue forget-me-not flower, which decorated the front cover of the Scottish Bulletin, became a symbol for the movement at that time. The first Older People's Week was held across Scotland from the 5th to the 12th of October in 1952. Older People's Day is now an international celebration held on the 1st of October each year. By 1959, 121 committees had been established across Scotland, with many more in the pipeline. In the 1960s, weekly Old People's Clubs continued to grow. These were supported by the local Old People's Welfare Committees and other groups who obtained the use of a room or a church hall one afternoon a week to bring older people together for weekly entertainment, tea and companionship. These clubs remain vitally important to this day. But by the 1960s, many local committees were looking to run daily clubs to provide the services and activities to meet the needs of their members. Significantly, at this time, we also saw a move to local committees looking to own their own club premises. Over the decades, there has been many distinguished chairs, including Miss Rodney Murray, who became chair of the National Committee in 1951. She also represented the charity on the King George VI Club Development Scheme, which awarded funds for buildings and equipment. The decade was a period of real innovation, with clubs and committees being more creative and diverse in the activities and services they provided. In 1971, the Scottish Old People's Welfare Committee became an independent charity and appointed its first director, George Foulkes.
I was very lucky to get appointed, and I did that for 6 years. And during that time we changed from the Scottish Old People's Welfare Council, this sort of traditional voluntary body, into a much more dynamic, much more active Age Concerned Scotland. We changed the name, we changed the emphasis, we got more involved in campaigns, we got involved in a whole range of new activities that the Scottish Old People's Welfare Council had not been involved with before.
Following suit, many of the local committees also took on the name Age Concern, as did many local organisations who were formed after 1974.
Well, looking back at the 1970s, things were pretty awful for pensioners. I mean, there was the loneliness that we still unfortunately have. A lot of people living alone, particularly widows, but also in some terrible circumstances. They were in slums, outside lavatories, and no bathrooms, some really awful, inappropriate housing, and their income. So they were on relatively poor income. People had to, most old people had to manage on the basic state pension, and that's why we got involved in the three main campaigns that we had during that period of time. One was to get the pension adequate and to have it linked to with an increase in earnings or the cost of living, whichever was the larger, to try and get an adequate pension. We started the whole movement for appropriate housing. Sheltered housing didn't exist in the early 1970s. We started that housing where older people were looked after, were cared for, much more appropriate housing. And then we also campaigned for concessionary travel, for free travel on the buses, to get older people out and about. And I mean, it's fantastic now. I think it's one of the greatest things to see older people jumping on a bus and going to the other side of the country and getting away.
The development of sheltered housing, local services and campaigns for older people to access benefit entitlements were just some of the many successes over the decade. In 1985, Age Concern Scotland and Shelter launched Care and Repair Edinburgh in Tollcross.
Care and Repair is an excellent charity that focuses on helping older people remain in their home for as long as possible. And we do that by going out to their homes and helping them with jobs that you probably don't think about become really difficult as you get older. How do you change a light bulb when you're 85?
Council identified houses that were substandard. People living without any property hot water. Sanitation was poor, outside toilets, and that's where our role came in, was to visit the clients, find out what sort of they needed, like, you know. Sometimes it was, in the majority of cases, it was like knocking walls down to create bathrooms. Hot water systems, central heating, double glazing, and it progressed to doing wet floor areas for clients, which was quite good as well.
Care and repair can make a huge difference to the older person. We install these handrails that enable people to get out and enjoy their garden that they might not have been able to do in the past, so they can enjoy the nice weather and sit in the sunshine.
During the decade, there were many examples of groundbreaking local services getting underway.
It was while I was working as a full-time community education worker in Buxburn that I first really got involved in working with older people. There was a big gap in the market because the centre I worked in had a very wide programme, both sort of social and sporty and the whole gambit, but the bit that was missing was older people, and the only thing that really happened was that once a month about 150 older people came into the place and for their pensioners meeting, and they were fed, watered and entertained and sent home again. And I remember thinking, there's more to life. We thought we should do something about this. What about doing something with walking with older people? People just loved it. We then thought, let's do something different. Let's do a residential course. We invited 15 people to come enjoy 5 days in Granton-on-Spey to enjoy the out of doors. That was so successful that they said more people need to do this. So they went to Education Committee, and as a result we got support and funding from the authority to run these courses 2 a year for 10 years.
Hoyk Senior Citizens Association started in 1985. There was a meeting convened in early 1985, and out of that came the Hoyk Senior Citizens Association. We're there to provide friendship first and foremost. It's you know, the activity's fine, but it's for socialising, it's for getting people out and getting people to meet other people.
I'm at the Age Concern Ayr Charity Advice Centre. We're based in Garden Street in Ayr, and we provide advice and services to the over 55s in South Ayrshire. At the Advice Centre we provide advice, either representation on the phone to older citizens who may not feel comfortable on the phone. We can call them up on their behalf. We can also do clerical and digital help for them, either filling in paper forms or filling in online forms, which is becoming the norm. We have a charity shop which funds this advice centre. That's been a well-established charity shop, and as a result of that shop being so successful, with the older population coming into it and asking questions to the shop staff, they weren't in a position to know the answers to those, so the trustee board decided we will open an advice centre.
To find out more about Age Concern Scotland in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, I'm here at the National Library of Scotland.
We're one of the legal deposit libraries, which means that we're entitled to collect a copy of everything published in the UK and Ireland. And as a library, we've been doing that for a very long time. That means that we have publications coming to us. We keep them forever, we store them, and they're just waiting to be discovered. It's been lovely to be able to get out for the Age Scotland History Detectives. The publications going right back to the Scottish Old People's Welfare Committee days, right at the outset, right through to now for Age Scotland publications.
I've invited two very special guests to help me look through the archives.
My name is Mary Marshall. I was the Director of Age Concern Scotland from 1983 to 1989.
And I'm Maureen O'Neill, and I was Director of Age Concern Scotland from 1993 to 2004.
I asked Mary what Age Concern Scotland was like when she took the helm in 1983.
When I arrived in 1983, the organisation was trying to operate across the board, which was plainly not sustainable. So we decided to have a year on a topic. One of the years was dementia. Right. And with each year, before the year, we would host a conference with the membership and experts to try and find out what the issues were that they were concerned about and wanted us to campaign on and produce materials on. This one was extraordinary. We met in, I suppose, about November with some experts and the membership. They wouldn't go home.
Wow.
They became so fired up because the whole picture in what had been 1984 for a year in 1985 was so dire, and people were so angry and upset at the lack of government interest, coordination, you name it, all the issues. So when we moved into our dementia year, which was 85, we had the embryo of Scottish Action on Dementia operating within the organisation, with the most astonishing group of activists, carers, professionals. People were feeling so indignant about the lack of any real commitment and action. And the thing just took off. You know? I stood on the sidelines as away it went, and indeed by the end of the year and the following year, Scottish Action on Dementia had formalised itself, and after they'd got their organisation properly structured and funded by the government, I might say, it was a very clever lobbying outfit, it flew off independently.
The various campaign themes carried through much of the charity's work, keeping the topic in the public eye through meetings, conferences and training events, publications, projects work and grants. As the director of Age Concern Scotland from 1993 to 2004, I wanted to know how Maureen felt when looking back at the reports and campaigns of her tenure.
I think it's extraordinary looking back. Actually, it makes you very proud of what the organisation achieved, and you know, as Mary said before, there was a really good staff team that really shoved the agenda. But we had real challenges. We've always had real challenges, and I think looking after older people poses many challenges. It would be very hard to pick out a particular year. But I suppose free personal care, I have to say that Linda Dunyan was absolutely brilliant as head of policy. She thought up some really strikingly good little campaigns that pushed it. And I think it culminated in the We Care campaign, which was partly to do with free personal care, but we also looked at elder abuse, and we also looked at the other issues around poverty. So it was a very strong year that we really pushed these issues to get government to focus on issues for older people. Honestly, I feel really chuffed and proud and looking back, you just...
Must be quite emotional as well, it brings back these memories.
Yes, it is quite emotional because I think we all invested a huge amount of energy and enthusiasm.
I was keen to learn what the relationship was like between Age Concern Scotland and Help the Aged.
It wasn't problematic for us because they raised money, and indeed they funded some things, and we were quite clear. I would meet their people regularly, but their job was raising money and dispersing it for projects, and our job was the policy, the campaigning, the groups, working in localities. And we raised money to survive and run projects. They raised money to disperse.
Yes.
You know, there wasn't a difficulty.
So that did change as Help the Aged became more involved in campaigning, more involved in policy work. And they did some absolutely brilliant policy work, which we benefited enormously from. But the organisations were apples and pears, because it took a long time to bring the two organisations together. And I think it was one of the most complicated mergers ever.
It was actually in 2009 that Age Concern Scotland and Help the Aged merged, the result being Age Scotland, the national charity for older people in Scotland. A very important part of the work we do is working with our member groups, with our community development team. We have over 1,100 member groups in Scotland, from the borders right up to the Shetlands.
Never mind the weather on a Wednesday afternoon. Don't leave a fuss, get on the bus and travel to your room. That's the place much asked for, it's
These groups are generally run by older people for and on behalf of older people. The members of the member groups make up about 250,000 older people. So our support is enabling these groups to continue the fantastic work they do in the communities and about supporting them in their sustainability.
I am organiser for the Afford Car Transport Service. I get drivers who are free to take people who want help to their various appointments, wherever that might be.
One of our members had been to Australia and had seen men's sheds there. They said, oh, might be an idea for Dalbeattie. People retire and think, what am I going to do now after they've painted the house? A lot of guys will tell you that it's refreshed their lives.
Our mission statement to improve, maintain and promote the social and mental well-being of older adults through walking football.
I run the Grey Panthers group at Linton Lane Centre. We have our lunch, we have the gentle exercise for older folk, and we have quizzes to keep the mind active and plenty of talk.
Our charitable aims are all about reducing loneliness and social isolation. What has evolved over time is a real understanding throughout Roar of the correlation between social connectedness and your actual mobility to be able to engage with those connections.
I like to be involved in what's happening in my community, and I've been quite intensely involved with the Pensioners Forum over, say, the last year since I became secretary, and I've been really impressed with their campaigning zeal. It does what it says on the tin, campaign for a better deal for older people, and they really do that, and they do it very well.
We have 2 lunch groups going out. We have a very, very active walking group. We have a singing group, line dancing group, photography group, 2 book groups, Scrabble group, gardening group. We're all very, very active. There's always something for everybody.
The sustainability of our member groups is vital to the work we do. We have a national conference. We do network events, as well as recognising the work of our member groups by our annual awards. We have a tremendous talented team here at Age Scotland who are committed to ensuring Scotland is a great place to grow old in.
I enjoy working at Age Scotland because there's a great opportunity to work with a fantastic team. We're always up for trying new things and new ideas to improve the lives of older people.
I think there's a really tangible and exciting sense right now that we're on the cusp of something really significant in terms of bringing about positive change for older people in Scotland.
The innovative thinking that happens here and the things that they actually make happen and being part of that.
There are so many people here that are absolutely committed to improving the lives of older people, and it's absolutely infectious.
There's such good people that work here, and I really like working for an organisation that's trusted throughout all our communities in Scotland.
Oh, I like working at Age Scotland because you can get up in the morning, know you're going to spend the day with some great people who are all doing their best to make a difference to older people's lives in Scotland.
Please be assured that we will continue to strive to achieve our mission, that everybody in Scotland can love later life.